Luke chapter 14. Jesus at a Pharisee's house. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. Then he asked them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?" And they had nothing to say. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. "When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, 'Give this person your seat.' Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, 'Friend, move up to a better place.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The parable of the great banquet. When one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." And Jesus replied, "A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is now ready.' But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, 'I have just bought a field, and I must go and see it. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me.' Still another said, 'I just got married, so I can't come.' The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' 'Sir,' the servant said, 'what you ordered has been done, but there is still room.' Then the master told his servant, 'Go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet.'" The cost of being a disciple. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.' Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear." Chapter 14, verses 1 through 6. Jesus was invited to eat at the home of one of the leading Pharisees. One of those present was a man suffering from dropsy, a condition that resulted in his body being swollen with fluid. Knowing that they were watching to see what he would do, Jesus asked them if it was lawful to heal on the Sabbath. No doubt they felt the same as the synagogue leader in chapter 13, 10 through 17, believing that it was unlawful to do so, but they were unwilling to answer and remained silent. So Jesus healed the man. Then he asked a question that showed they were hypocrites. Any one of them would help a son or an ox on the Sabbath if it fell into a well. So why was it wrong in their eyes to do good to a man by healing him? They were twisting God's law to suit themselves. Verses 7 through 11. When he noticed how the invited guests chose places of honor closer to the host, Jesus exhorted them to do otherwise. Rather than choosing the best seat, only to be asked to give it up to a more distinguished person, they should instead choose the lowest place. This would give the host an opportunity to move them up to a better seat. Notice that the first scenario results in humiliation, but the latter results in honor. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. The Pharisees exalted themselves, assuming that they held important positions in the kingdom, but Jesus sought to teach them the relationship between humility and exaltation. We are to live with an eternal perspective in mind, not with a desire for notoriety. Followers of Christ are not to exalt themselves by presumptuously seeking positions of greatness. Rather, they are to assume lower positions of service and allow God to exalt them. Humility is the true path to glory. Verse 12 through 14. Having spoken to the guests, Jesus then addressed the host. He encouraged him not to invite merely his friends and relatives to share meals with them, but to invite the poor and lame, those who could not repay him. Inviting the outcasts of society would indicate that he had an eternal perspective, since repayment for such would come at the resurrection. Verse 15 through 24. One of the guests with him at the meal declared, "Blessed is the one who will eat bread in the kingdom of God." So Jesus told a parable emphasizing that many who expected to be there would be excluded from the kingdom. The man in the parable invited a large number of people to a banquet, but they all gave excuses explaining why they could not come. Angry at this, the man sent his servant to gather the rejected of society, the poor, maimed, blind, and lame. Even after this, there was still room for more. So the host insisted that others be brought in, since those originally invited had rejected it. Since most of the Jews rejected Jesus, his kingdom message would be declared and received by others, by the Gentiles. There's no excuse for rejecting Jesus. The king and his kingdom must have priority. Verse 25 through 26. Tremendous crowds were following Jesus, but he knew that many of them were merely following him for the show he was providing, the miracles, the healings, the exorcisms, the teachings. So he wanted them to understand that to truly be his disciple was costly, and said that unless one were to hate his own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, he could not be a disciple. Now that's a pretty tall order. Aren't children called to love and honor their parents? See Exodus 20:12. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Aren't husbands called to love their wives as Christ loved the church? See Ephesians 5:25. What did Jesus mean? The parallel passage in Matthew helps explain. In Matthew 10:37, Jesus said, "The one who loves a father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. The one who loves a son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." The point is that Jesus deserves priority over every other relationship. If you must choose between Jesus and a family member, then Jesus wins. Our love for him must be so strong that unbelieving family members think our love for them might as well be hate, because we chose to obey Jesus rather than do what they want. This is the call to and cost of discipleship. Verse 27. The cost of discipleship doesn't end there. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after Jesus cannot be his disciple. Crucifixion was the Roman execution of choice for heinous criminals, and a condemned person had to carry his cross to his crucifixion site. So Jesus' listeners knew what he was talking about. Many had seen it happen. Jesus was telling them that becoming his disciple would involve some form of suffering. Not every Christian disciple's suffering is the same, but every Christian disciple will suffer. This is because to bear your cross and follow Jesus means to identify with him. And as Jesus told his disciples, if they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. John 15:20. Verse 28 through 33. Continuing his discussion of the cost of discipleship, Jesus described two scenarios. In the first, a man decided to build a tower. Before beginning, a wise builder would naturally calculate the cost to ensure that he could complete the work. The second scenario involved a king going to war. Long before battle begins, a king must make sure that he has sufficient forces to defeat his enemy. Otherwise, he should seek terms of peace. The follower of Christ must similarly count the cost of what it means to truly be his disciple. In particular, a disciple must renounce all his possessions. That means recognizing that you are a steward of all you have. You are not an owner. God has given you possessions to manage. You are to thank him for them. And that's what I was saying in the last video. What you must not do is claim ownership. The call of discipleship is the seriously calculated decision to surrender all that you are and all that you have to the lordship of Jesus Christ. Verse 34 through 35. Jesus concluded his discourse on the costly nature of discipleship with an observation about the nature of salt. Salt is good. That statement meant more to Jesus' hearers than to most of us. To them, salt not only flavored food but preserved it. There were no refrigerators. But if salt loses its taste, how will it be made salty? The obvious answer is that it won't be. The saltiness of salt is what makes it salt. Without that, it isn't fit for the manure pile. Likewise, unless a Christian is willing to endure the costly nature of being a disciple, he is useless to the kingdom of God. Let anyone who has ears to hear listen. Is Jesus' way of saying, though everyone has ears, not everyone listens. You better pay close attention. And that is the end of chapter 14. A very big and impactful teachings in that one. Next up will be chapter 15, which follow 3 parables. The parable of the lost sheep, parable of the lost coin, and the parable of the lost son, which the lost son's my favorite parable. So God bless everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next one.